Hi everyone, welcome to Simply Stampin' Up For You October card class tutorials. The first card that we're going to work on today is called Autumn Days, and it's in preparation for Thanksgiving. The first thing that we're going to do is use Not Quite Navy, fold that in half as our card base, and then we're going to attach and adhere on a piece of old olive cardstock. I'm just leaving a slight border around the edge. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be stamping with the Baroque Motifs Flourish and Small Flower on a piece of very vanilla cardstock. So I'm going to take my flourishes first, and I'm going to be stamping this in old olive ink. And sometimes it's difficult to get the ink all the way on the flourish, so sometimes stamping it upside down or inking it upside down is very helpful. And there doesn't have to be any rhyme or reason to your flourishes. They're just more of a background effect. Just like that. Then I'm going to take my small flower from the Baroque Motif set, and I'm going to stamp it in really rust ink. And I'm just going to make some small flowers just randomly throughout the flourishes. And then I can attach this onto the base of my card. Now this is going to be right at the top where the card creases, and I'm going to leave just a small border again around the edge of this stamped piece of vanilla cardstock and the old olive that I had previously used. Alright, we are going to be using for our main image a piece of Not Quite Navy, Really Rust, and Very Vanilla. And we're going to be using the Autumn Days stamp set in the main Stampin' Up! Catalog. And I found that it was difficult for myself to come up with something interesting to do with this. But we're taking the bird, and we're going to be stamping the bird in really rust ink. And it's really important that you make sure and check your stamp pad your stamp to make sure that it's fully covered, because sometimes they don't. And I'm going to take my stamp, and I'm going to try and get it as far to the right as possible. Maybe not that far right. So I'm going to turn it over. This is an important lesson. You can always use the back side of your paper if you don't like what has turned out. He was a little too far to the right. Okay. There we go. That's better. Okay. And now I'm going to take the Happy Thanksgiving words from Teeny Tiny Wishes, and I'm going to stamp that in the Not Quite Navy. Now, because these are really tiny word stamps, they're really delicate, so you don't have to push very hard when you are stamping. And sometimes I like to stamp the words upside down so I can see where they're ending up and that they're not off the page. Just like that. Okay, now I'm going to take the ticket corner punch, and I'm going to be punching all of the sections that are going to be layered together. So the Very Vanilla, the Really Rust, and the Not Quite Navy. And I don't know what inspired me to put these colors together, but I really like them. And I feel like they're not the typical and traditional colors that we might put together during this time of year. I really like the ticket corner and the effect that it gives. And sometimes it just adds a small different dimension than just layering a piece of paper together. So I'm going to, before I layer these together, I'm going to be using the slit punch for some ribbon that I'm going to be using. But because our punches don't tend to go through more than one layer of paper, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out where I want it to be on this piece of vanilla cardstock, and I'm going to punch it out, so that once I layer it on my other pieces, I can punch in that same location with the others. So I'm going to layer it onto the really rust. And now I can find that hole easily with my slit punch, and I can punch it again. And then the same with my piece of not quite navy. And slit punch one last time. You'll find that if you try and punch through too many pieces of paper, it won't work usually, so that's why we just did this individually. Okay, now the last piece that I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small piece of the 1/4 inch vanilla grosgrain ribbon, and I'm just going to stick that through the slit punch. And instead of tying that in a knot, just to give it a different feel and effect, I'm taking a small piece of twine and I'm going to tie it around my piece of vanilla ribbon. This is when having more than 2 hands would be helpful. And all you need to do is just, easier said than done, just tie this into that. And it should stay pretty well put. And I'm just going to trim my piece of vanilla ribbon at a diagonal, another piece at a diagonal, and then I'm just going to trim these up a small bit. Now I can attach this onto my main background. And that is our autumn base card.